as we moved swiftly into our next speaker around transitioning your business to circularity, I want to introduce Kiera Pettersson, a circular economy specialist applying systems analysis, strategy, and hybrid thinking tools to grassroots context in Southern Africa. Working as a strategic advisor as well as a project manager for the African Circular Economy Network, Kiera aligns partnerships and goals for the acceleration of the circular economy implementation across the African continent. Last year, I had the fortunate chance of actually being part of the green economy in Nairobi. And these are the kind of conversations that are happening in the continent. So to have it here at home is actually awesome. So thank you for that, Kiera. And what she does as well is work as a consultant for firms, international NGOs like ICLEI and ILO, as well as co-founder of Big Circle Studios. And at each stage, Kiera's role is to manage the strategic placement for project outputs with the overarching goal of building a case for the circular economy at a local and a global level. So, Kiera, looking forward to your presentation. If you can come forward, please. And you're talking about transitioning your business to circularity. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Ooh. Working? Yeah, perfect. So thank you, everyone, for coming today, and thank you for that very comprehensive introduction. I think that everyone here is definitely, given that there's so many familiar faces in the room, definitely familiar with the circular economy. But just to get us all on the same page, I figured I'd start with a little bit of an introduction to the African Circular Economy Network in general, a little bit of an intro to the circular economy, and then a discussion about some tools and approaches to transitioning to the circular economy from a business perspective, and I think more specifically from an African perspective. I think that often a lot of the conversations around circularity end up being a pretty Eurocentric approach. African approaches fundamentally need to come at different perspective and different tools and different positioning. And so hopefully we can get a little bit of a conversation going about that today as well. But yes, as mentioned, my name is Kiera Pettersson. I'm here with the African Circular Economy Network. The African Circular Economy Network is a member-based network across the continent with, I think, close to 600 members now, representation across 40 countries. And kind of the intention is that we're looking at different ways of approaching inclusive growth in Africa. As I said, the African Circular Economy Network is a group of circular economy experts from different fields, very multidisciplinary. Some of you in this room are members, I believe, or at least familiar faces. And we are looking at promoting new business practices according to concept and principles from the circular economy. These are looking at just transition-based approaches that are inclusive, have long-term bottom line gains, and are really fundamentally about marrying both grassroots principles and policy and top-down based approaches to the circular economy. Our vision is to build a restorative African economy that generates well-being and prosperity inclusive of all its people through new forms of economic production and consumption which maintain and regenerate its environmental resources. Just to reiterate again, this is very fundamentally looking at solutions that are African-oriented from people and businesses and experts in Africa, and working together to build a cohesive economy that's recognizing the power and resources that we have on the continent as well. These are achieved through the four vision pillars of ASIN, namely knowledge sharing, training and awareness, networking and events, and through research. Much of the African Circular Economy Network is based in South Africa as its operations team is here. But all of these kind of engagements and processes happen across the continent through each of our chapters. And more specifically, we look at pathways to sustainable growth and resilience through the circular economy. So just from an introductory level, the circular economy looks at reviewing the linear economy that we have in place now, which is oriented around the principles of take, make, and dispose. So it's kind of our simple, straightforward line, how our economy is built and resource by extraction. and taking that and looking forward to a regenerative system where resources are reused and redistributed. This approach aims to keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, extracting maximum value before recovering and regenerating them at the end of their service life. As before mentioned, the really comprehensive overview of EPR that was given obviously falls well and snugly into this. EPR is a massive part of the circular economy, especially looking at the business lens, but there are many, many other conversations that need to be had. I think what often happens in the circular economy is that the conversation ends up being about waste and recycling, which is a very important part, but it really is kind of the last catchment, last mile component of the circular economy. Really what we're trying to do is look at way, way, way early on in the value chain and supply chain, looking at the design components, looking at how we're thinking about systems, looking at how we are actually conceiving of products and services within our economy and how we deliver them most effectively. There are many different kind of ways of approaching this, but three kind of core components of the circular economy and how we can approach it more regeneratively is by designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating. We think about these core components as the basics of the circular economy. We can approach that much more fundamentally from a business perspective as well. Here we have the kind of one of the core diagrams that relate to the circular economy. This is called the butterfly diagram, Cartha Foundation. And here you can see kind of the two wings of what the circular economy is made up of. On the left-hand side is the renewable flow management, the regeneration of the biosphere, farming collection, biochemical feedstock, all the different components that are kind of link us to nature. Are in. Sorry, let me just pull it out here. Yeah. One moment. Oh. Better here, yeah. But yeah, here you can see the different cascades that happen on the within the kind of natural section of the circular economy, though it's helpful to not actually exclude us from the natural systems. But they are like on the green side, the biosphere elements, and then on the right-hand side, the stock management. Obviously, both apply to everyone. As previously mentioned, we only have one planet and we are embedded in the natural system, whether we conceive of it or not. But on the right-hand side, you can see the more stock management side, which I think is fundamentally applicable to the business lens. And these cascades here then go through different elements. My colleague earlier showed the diagram of the 5 R's, which is that kind of conical shape of reduce, reuse, recover, recycle. And this is kind of demonstrating that in a slightly different way. So from the user collection, there's maintain, prolong, there's reuse and distribute, refurbish, manufacture, and recycle. Systems that look into this could be something as straightforward as product as a service, which I think we're all familiar with. Basically trying to reduce our impact on the system by sharing resources, by recovering them and maintaining their use. This is all to minimize systematic leakage and negative externalities. And that's both within our natural systems and with our human-generated systems. I think functionally a really good process from the circular economy is to just look at it from an efficiency lens. So, nature doesn't have waste. Everything gets used, everything gets taken up. It's highly efficient. If we can look at those systems and learn from them, we can share and mirror the cascades that happen in our natural world, in our economic world as well. So the need for circularity, I think, is pretty, abundantly aware to all of us, but just to go through the fundamental components from an environmental and economic lens. Environmentally, a lot of our business models, likely not to the people in this room, are significantly contributing to environmental degradation. A lot of waste ends up in landfills. Those landfills are running out of space, and those resources are being depleted at an unsustainable rate. These practices impact our climate, they impact our livelihood, the lives of the reclaimers who live on the landfills, and as mentioned before, become interlinked with all of our consumption practices, and our overconsumption practices fundamentally then impact the people around us as well. From an economic lens, circular economy can lead to significant cost savings through improved resource efficiency and waste reduction. And businesses can also tap into new revenue streams by creating products and services from recycled materials, offering repair, refurbishing, and remanufacturing services. I think this also kind of gives us a new approach of looking at what we create and what we generate through our businesses as something that then becomes a feedstock for our own businesses. So developing services that kind of have continuous returns into how we create and how we look at the systems around us. There are steps to transition to circularity, but to kind of boil them down to what I think are kind of maybe 4 simple pillars and approaches. Is first step being assessment and strategy. So that means looking at what you have in place, identifying areas for improvement, and setting really clear and achievable goals. Nothing, obviously we can shoot for the moon and hopefully, really create something amazing. But the first step should always be small and manageable. Redesign processes and products after that assessment. So looking at those low-hanging fruits, focusing on designing products that are durable, repairable, and recyclable. Implement eco-friendly materials and processes that reduce waste and resource consumption. Then more broadly, stakeholder engagement. We're all familiar with that and all familiar with the value that comes from collaboration and sharing. And this really comes from communicating with suppliers, communicating with customers, and the broader community that you're a part of as your business. And all of this together kind of stokes buy-in, stokes innovation, and really gets more conversations going, which is the most important thing. And then over this time, all of it is M&E. So measure, track, and trace. Use the metrics that you've developed during your assessment and strategy stage to create transparency through your supply chain, to have regular progress reports on how you're doing, and to build trust and commitment. These are supported again, as I mentioned, by collaborative opportunities. I think that partnerships are kind of the backbone, a lot of different components of the circular economy. One of the most prolific, I'd say, is in a system called industrial symbiosis, which really relies on everyone within a specific area or specific sphere generating and using waste as a stock feed for each other. So at a basic level, for instance, a company who makes orange juice might have pulp or citrus peel as a waste stock. That then waste stock can feed into another company who is making, citrus scented products from the waste peel. And there's kind of like a really simple loop. Obviously that's oversimplified, but it's, a fundamental component of collaboration. I think that more specifically and helpfully, there are actual tools for transition. I think there are many, but just to highlight one that I think is relevant to the people in this room, is a South African company called Kudoti. They provide a digital product for supply chain oversight. And I am not affiliated with the company, but I can provide a quick snapshot of what they do, which is essentially trying to address the lack of information and data on waste generation by providing a service to companies that looks at assessing their supply chain, looking at the points of waste and where they create, and trying to build an efficiency using a really data-heavy tool and give functional oversight of where they could redirect their waste, where they could cut down on waste, and where they can kind of be more supportive of other waste streams as well. They basically want to help companies transact with each other through their data and to fill gaps where waste is not being optimally collected or sorted or recycled, and try and optimize some of the elements of the circular economy that I think are a little bit harder for people to build alone, and provide a software essentially that just gives functional oversight to a lot of different companies at once. They've run a really interesting pilot with Distel out in Ekurhuleni, looking at what reuse services can do from a local economy perspective. So working with informal reclaimers and public service reclaimers to basically absorb the reusable glass and bring that back into the system, and basically track and trace what that means from an economic level for the reclaimers, but also for Distel as a company who then has glass as a feedstock. And instead of having to buy new glass each time they sell a product, that product comes back to them and saves them money. So what's next? I think that from a business level, there kind of are three stages, as mentioned in the steps for transition: pilot projects, stakeholder and team engagement, and monitoring and transparent reporting. I think all of this can kind of lead us towards an approach that makes us more compliant, kind of also gets us ahead of the curve in front of some international policy changes that are happening. There is a big wave of changes that are happening that need to make us more compliant with global SDG standards. Policies like the EPR are compelling industry to act, so kind of the sooner you get ahead of it, the better it is for you. And there are also changes in consumer behavior around what's prioritized and what's important. And kind of all of these things need to be taken into one foul swoop to kind of be a part of what the momentum change is happening as well. Thank you very much.